Greetings, everybody out there in Nephilim land. Welcome to another exciting installment of the Westmarch Workshop. Yes, indeed, it's your favorite Diablo 3 podcast, the only Diablo 3 podcast that you need, even though we're cool with those other guys. You might say, cool story, bro. And, you know, whoever else is doing podcasts out there these days, I don't know, they pop up sometimes and then they go away. But in any case, we're always here for you, except for when we're not. At least 2 times per month, I hope. But, you know, there's exciting things going down these days. You might say that even the dead are rising out of their graves once again. So sit back and relax. We have an exciting episode for you here. This one's titled, It's Inarius or Nothin. A little bit of foreshadowing to what we'll be talking about today. And I bring you your host, normally, Leviathan, that's me. And whoa, who's that guy in that other box?
Who is it? Who am I? What are we?
What are we? Are you trying to define the... Wow, you're moving in already. Nine's not here for one episode. Like, what are we? I want to be something with you.
Want to try. All right, enough.
So it's Dredscythe. Woo!
Yeah! I'm back. We all know what that means. Data. Okay,
yeah.
That's later.
Wait, Data from, like, Star Trek?
Data. No, just data. Excel data. I'm not that cool. nor am I a Trekkie. Oh, sorry.
Oh, now you're really not fulfilling the Neinball shoes.
Nope, I'm not. We're not living up to the beard.
Nope. Fear the beard. Ninebeard. Yeah, that's... By the way, guys, I don't remember if that was in... I think that happened after last week's episode, but Neinball is now Ninebeard. If you refer to him as anything else, he will not answer. He will only answer to Ninebeard now. It's a great little thing that happened on one of the other podcasts that is held on this channel, the Heroes Power Hours. So feel free to check them out. They go live on Tuesdays around this time as well. So yeah, we're here talking some Diablo stuff. How have your weeks in gaming been, especially since we haven't had you on the show in quite some time? Season 10. I mean, we're gonna have a little season 10 wrap up, but
yeah.
How's yours?
Okay, we'll try. Well, if we're gonna do season 10 wrap up, I'll try to stay one. I'll stick to general, I suppose. I'll say season 10, started well. Falling in with the usual suspects, Shepard being one of them, and the usual group. That always comes together for like the first 2 weeks, and then magically disappears because the nostalgia of a season opening kind of just fades and goes away. So everything went really well. It was the second time in a row, hit 600 on the Paragon on the Sunday of the season opening. So that was always nice. And then completely contradictory to that whole season, life happened as far as living. I won't say living situation because it makes it seem like we got kicked out of Blizzcon. The wife and I finally decided that we were going to. We're going to get our own damn place because for those in now the pre-show, that you'll go back to the Twitch video clip,
VOD.
whatever, video on demand. There we go. I have to say, my wife had to leave the current room. That's why her playing her YouTube and watching stuff, it doesn't interfere with the recording, because we put in an offer for a house Easter, and then everything just kept falling into place. Basically, like the type of the mortgage, the interest rate, the amount of money we would have to put down, or the lack thereof, the amount of seller's assist we were getting, like all these weird foreign things have nothing to do with gaming, but for someone who wants to buy a house are really exciting magically. Like math is exciting for just a little bit. So that unfortunately kneecapped like half the season. There was probably a good 5-6 weeks that I was like, I can't game because being an adult and getting financial paperwork in order, and then taxes and all the kind of fun stuff like that. So, but managed to come back for the last 2 weeks of the season to get a preemptive jump on these shared stash mess that it always is. and managed to finish out strong. So we'll leave a little bit more for later as far as the season 10 wrap up. So I'll leave it at that. We won't make this a half an hour deal.
But that's usually what we strive for, right? When we had Flux and he gave us his 3-hour spiel on his Demon Hunter, you have to at least top that.
No, he was giving you his life story at that point.
Oh boy. I also just realized that we actually didn't say where Nine is. We just noted that he's guy missing in this picture. Doesn't even have a box. So Neinball, Ninebeard, I keep forgetting.
We have to make something up in like 5 seconds. We can't tell the truth. We have to make something up.
Ninebeard got hit by a car. I don't know why that was the first thing I went to. That's really violent. Actually, let's see. He got recruited for a Renaissance reenactment in Williamsburg, Virginia, last minute.
There we go. That's good.
And he really used to be into LARPing. He was actually talking about this on his stream a couple nights ago. He loves just heavy armor, wearing as much of it as he can whenever he can. And I guess, he was walking downtown to Petco, where all the pets go, and someone just noticed that he had just amazing scintillating chainmail clanging around. I guess it was kind of hard to miss because it was pretty noisy, and all the dogs were barking because of it. But then the guy kind of made contact with him, was like, hey, you got some armor, I got a sword, let's team up and you be my tank. And so now I believe he's on day 3 of the Battle of Williamsburg in Virginia that's being reenacted, even though this is the first time it's actually happening. It's like a weird future thing. I think he went in time space continuum. There was a black hole that did a tear.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, great, cool, thanks.
Okay. We'll just sum it up with hashtag, as Fouch said, hashtag LARPing for beards.
Perfect. Yeah, he's LARPing to defend his beard. The honor of his beard. Oh my god. So yeah, he's a FK. And he'll be back next time though. So for the season preview show, the night before the season, which will be the next episode, the 19th of July, we'll be kicking that one off, and the next day you'll be able to hop into season 11. So here's your little reminder that season 11 is starting on a different day than normal. That's Thursday, July 20th. At the normal time, though, for your time zone, which is that 5 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, European Standard, whatever it is over there, Korean time, etc. So, yeah. How do you feel? I guess you weren't here, so how do you feel about the Thursday start? Does that throw you off?
Well, I'm unfortunately not the person to ask because I'll be on vacation starting on that Thursday and running to the following Tuesday. So my entire seasonal start is basically, kiss goodbye and evaporated to the winds. But as far as this in general, I mean, I could understand for people like yourself and your group that like the conquests are a big deal and that is actually a driver for the weekend. Yeah, that kind of sucks. It's like, because it's like, oh yeah, I'll just take off that Friday crawl. It's like, no, we're responsible. Fuck.
It really pulls at those strings because you are completely right. There's the motivation to be there for the very beginning, do the 24 hours or however long, get all those achievements and conquests and things done, because there really is no other time. That it's such a unique part of the season. There's really no other way to get it back, so you have to plan around those first day or two if you have those aspirations. So it's kind of a bummer that you missed that part. Like, there goes however much percent you want to say that is of your season. Obviously there are other goals beyond that, but that's just one chunk that's kind of like, oh man, it's by default already donezo's. So.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, fuck myself personally, I kind of view it as like, it's like when you pre-order a game and like 4-day like head start type deal. That's how I'm kind of viewing this. It's a 1-day head start than normal. So for the normal person, I would say looking at it like, okay, I can get my whatever class I'm playing up to 70 and maybe try for an ancient weapon and then be done for the night, and then come back Friday and Saturday and already be at that power level, and then just keep on progressing from that point. So kind of view it as a bonus, but again, double-edged sword with everything. We'll probably touch on it later. The conquests this season are the more easier ones, and the more solo friendly ones. So that's gonna make the people who I can't commit to work today. Those people will definitely have an advantage because we've done those so much before that everyone knows how to do them, and they'll get them done really quickly. So it's not so much a how do you feel? It's kind of you're at quite a moral dilemma with yourself.
Yeah.
The angel and demon inside are pulling at you. Which side will win?
I mean, I guess in the long run, it's just one season where that occurs, and hopefully, I hope, they'll go back to the Fridays, because I think just in general, it's more convenient for everyone. You can kind of plan around a longer weekend. Even if you were going to take a Friday off, you might take that Friday to get some sleep and then go for a super long time, waking up later that Friday and then going into Saturday. But I guess, it always to be seen. I'm just kind of curious because I can't help but believe that they got all they needed to get the last week and a half, or however long the Necromancer has already been out. I guess a week and a day now. I just don't feel like it's going to be that overloaded unless there are really that many people holding off from playing until the season goes live, and maybe that honestly will be a thing. I just don't foresee what they are anticipating. I get that is kind of what they're driving at. Like, there's just going to be insane amounts of everyone wanting to play when the season goes live, but I just don't feel like it's going to be so overwhelming that it needs to be such a difference of start. But anyway, I guess we've tunneled on that one long enough.
I guess it's more or less that they're worried like something's going to happen at the 11th hour. Get it? With season 11. And they just want to have that one day of damage control. And I don't think it's really a population issue, because the launch of Reaper Souls was a hotfix and that went through smooth as butter. I think it's more or less a switch over of the season itself, and just making sure necromancers can be made. Probably something with the store, making sure that people buy it, they can make a character, all the weird nonsense that you can never think of happening until it happens, and then to check for it next time around on the QA side. So that's pretty much what it is at this point.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, we have many other topics to cover tonight, so we'll get off that soapbox and get you a interesting and exciting one, because we did talk about this last episode, which is that Blizzard decided to reveal another round of Blizzcon tickets. They noted that they're going to open up the new hall at the Anaheim Convention Center, and as such, it'll be ready for BlizzCon, and Blizzard's going to take advantage of it. So that means they're going to put more people inside that thing, and therefore you'll be able to get more tickets. So tonight, Shove them in. Get it going. All of you who are listening live right now, you have a less than 45-minute warning. You have 43 minutes by my clock until the next batch of tickets goes on sale. So make sure you have your universe page open, have your account pre-made, all that good stuff. Maybe you're working with some friends. Make sure everybody's got their credit card info ready. And hopefully the gods, the RNGesus, whoever else you pray to, the primal gods, hopefully they're all in your favor so that you can grab some tickets if you didn't get any in the first 2 rounds. It's kind of an exciting thing, though. It's weird to think that there was that whole sort of like Zerg rush for them, a couple of months ago, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait, that feeling is back again, that excitement of BlizzCon.
BlizzCon. I think I'm going to be halfway dead by the time BlizzCon rolls around with everything in between now and then. There's too much going on. Let's just say there will be much drinking to be had. But you're right. It is exciting that hall, that even yourself, because this will be your 3rd BlizzCon, if I remember correctly.
I think so.
we've been seeing the construction of that whole thing. 2 years ago, it was just literally a dirt pit, and they were just doing the foundation. Last year, most of the structure was up, and the bridge, the second level bridge that connects the new addition to the convention center, was up, but it was still basically a husk. So I guess they got uh, basically got the okay to sell more tickets, and pretty much, unless someone in the chat or someone who actually knows more than what I know, basically, if I remember correctly, they could only sell X amount of tickets because of fire code limits. That's the reason why they may have wanted to sell more tickets in years past, but they started in only one part of the convention center, and now they filled up all four parts, and now they use the arena for StarCraft. I think they started doing that 2 years ago. And now that since they have this part, it's technically opening up more room, which by default is opening up more fire code access. So the only interesting thing is, I guess, one from a technical standpoint, is how many more tickets can they sell? Is it going to be like 2? Is it going to be 3? Is it going to be 4? Is it going to be some?
Is it going to be 2? Are you joking?
No, like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, like that. No,
like, how trolly would it be? They're like, all right, guys, go get them. All right, they're sold out.
Go get it. Go get it. You're going to have this room to yourself. Okay, yeah, no. If it's going to be like between, like, say, like 2 and 4, or is it going to be something substantial, like between like 4 and 8? Because that expansion is actually pretty big, and it's pretty much just all open space. And then I guess the more guessing game, BlizzCon prediction side is what's actually going to be over there. And my initial thought was, now that that's open, that's just essentially open space. I'm wondering if they're just going to shove all the panel stages and all the like vendors, like Steel Series is there or someone else is there. They kind of move them over there. So the big convention area is strictly for the main stage, because, you have to have the opening ceremony in there.
Right.
As well as, it's just full on esports arenas in the convention center. And then that's why if you don't want to be bothered with that, you can just go over to the other one. It's quieter. You can listen. They probably have more seating for the panels, maybe even get a couple more panels in because there's more space for more stages. That's my initial thinking on the matter. But it's exciting because it's like something new at the con. And it's not just probably going to be another WoW announcement and everything, but something physically new at the convention center is always nice.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about it last episode, so I'm sure everyone wanted to hear what your thoughts were. My only addition to this is you have to think also about the ripple effects of including, we're talking thousands of potential tickets being sold for additional people that weren't there in previous years. Therefore, more hotel congestion, more food truck congestion, more line congestion. So I do have to believe that at least part of this use of more space has to be with increased demo areas, because they can't get to a point where the quality of the convention goes down because they let more people in. So I would imagine that, they have more computers, more space to accommodate maybe longer lines per se, but at least they're going to funnel people through faster because there'll be more stations. So I have to at least believe there's part of that going down. But yeah, I mean, it's exciting to think what else they could do. I do feel like esports will be a big part of it too, because they just seem to be on such a big kick. I mean, Overwatch League is coming, so that's got to be another big selling point to this whole thing.
Yeah, that definitely. That whole arena was. It felt like when you went through the front gate of the Overwatch arena last year, you felt like you were walking to like any sports arena. They made it feel exactly like it. It was nuts.
It was super cool. All right. Well, you have your warning. At this point now, you have 38 minutes. So get ready. Get those F5 fingers ready.
Tick tock, tick tock.
All right. So this is the point where we can do Season 10 recap stuff. I actually advertently did not talk about my weekend gaming because a lot of it was Season 10 recap. Even though there were only a few days left in the season, it was eventful because I think by the time we had the podcast, I had gotten my 98, so I was second, ranked 2 on the solo Demon Hunter leaderboards for Greater Rifts, Hardcore, blah, blah, blah. 12 seconds off of rank 1 at that point, who had done a UE Grenades Greater Rift 98. And then was trying desperately for 99s. And, like, I am pretty sure that Friday should not have ever happened. Like, I think I was running on maybe 12 hours of cumulative sleep by Friday. And basically like a zombie, but I wanted to just get a few more attempts in. I felt like I was really getting the build down, really starting to figure out exactly what rifts I needed, what populations of mobs, like every little minutia was starting to look good. And then I just got to the point where I remember I was ahead of the time. I was in a 99, I was fishing like crazy. There's 90 minutes left in the season, so the desperation's kind of starting to hit. I'm like, man, I gotta get a good one. And I'm ahead of the timer. I'm in, I think, the second floor, which is the battlefields, which is really good usually. Mm-hmm. There's unburieds, there's like good mobs and stuff. And I remember I was like in this fight with a bunch of unburieds and an elite, and my health was just spiking randomly every now and again. I was like, that's kind of weird. I don't see what's doing damage to me, but I'm just gonna keep fighting. And so it spikes, and I hit my potion, and I like maneuver around to get the elusive ring, all that stuff going for me again. And then it spikes and I proc, but I'm just standing there. I'm kind of still not processing the fact that like I should probably move on from this or reconsider what's happening right now. And eventually I just died from legit the same exact circumstance. So I don't know, my brain was just like shut off at that point. So the only sad part was I didn't get to take that character into non-season and then mess around with Higher Paragon, but I think it kind of lived its purpose of being alive for essentially the majority of the whole season and then going out in the blaze of glory. So it kind of felt like that's how a season should go, you know? You push until you're dead, like right before it's over.
You fulfilled your 300 dream. Fight until you can't fight anymore.
Pretty much, right? It's like something out of a movie. So, I mean, it was cool, though. It was good to kind of get that feeling of this is what we were working towards, doing all that grinding, all that Paragon farming, and then putting it to use in that last, week to push. Like that's how a season technically should look from an efficiency standpoint. But there's always something in the middle there that can screw it up. I mean, even this season wasn't perfect, so I'm looking forward to season 11 because we're hopefully going to refine things even further. And the Necromancer is here, like we mentioned. That released on the 27th, so it's been a week plus. At this point, I have killed so many Necromancers, Dread. It's horrible.
I was keeping track when I was doing the house, and I'm like, well, when life is a resource and you're playing hardcore, yeah, it's good. I'm like, just don't make it a bad habit.
Yeah, it's interesting. The blood stuff's interesting. Blood rushing is interesting. Like it's weird because I almost want to be more offensive because the Necromancer has at some points really great damage output, especially in the Inarius set. It's kind of where the title of this came from. If you look at the leaderboards right now, everything is Inarius. It's Inarius or nothing, and
Pretty
that's
much
going to change. We'll talk more about that in the future of this episode, but it's also really squishy. I just feel like it's so hard to build good defense with the Necro right now, at least without feeling like you're just sacrificing a ton. I don't know. It's obviously that means hardcore. Like you're trying to find those thin lines between being alive and being dead, and I'm finding all the ways to die at this point. But it's been kind of cool to learn a new class, learn the new mechanics, learn where you can be strong, where you can be weak. And I'm looking forward to the tweaks because Necro is definitely in a spot where it could use improvements, but it's not it's not a lost cause in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess just to add a little bit to it, I definitely agree with like the whole squishy quote unquote of the Necro. It's because the class, I think, I guess not to harp on the Necro, but we have to remember the development team has had. With the game being released, we're talking about Diablo 3, Reaper Souls, and now Necro, because that's kind of another chapter in the continuing of the franchise. They've had 5+ years of development experience, and they've already developed a class beyond the base game. So, essentially, the Necro, they were like, okay, we really want to make a class that's interesting, and we really actually want to pour, and we see it. Like, every passive tends to be a hard choice. Every ability tends to be a choice 5 times harder than the passives. And the Necro's, I would say the skill cap for Necro is definitely higher than the other classes. I guess you could say partly because the other classes are locked into their sets, and the sets kind of determine what you're majorly doing. But the options for the Necro are so much more open-ended. The sets don't matter as much on your mind when you're making decisions. And I think the Necro has a finite line where you're either overpowered killing everything, or you hit a brick wall and you just hopefully don't die, and you continue on and you try to figure out another way to get your build further, or you just throw it to the side, say, okay, this is my speed farm. Nope, this is my T11. Nope, this is my GR up to 60 build. Let's see if I can find one that can do a GR 70 for, the season and primals and everything like that. So there's still going to be a lot of trial and error. And I'm actually happy that people are finding things and reporting things about the class, because that gives them like a 2-week dash to try to get a fix in, make sure it works, get it in the game for the season. Because I think people would, even though they love the Necro, they would be disappointed that it would be going in this shape into the season and then have to wait basically until the beginning of BlizzCon hype for the fix. So it would seem a little belated at that point. Like hype got undercut a little bit. So I'm glad that they did this whole 1-month deal and give it time to marinate, fix it, and hopefully season 11 is the season of death.
I hope not. I hope enemies will be dying. I hope players won't be dying.
Okay, the season of reaping. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Sides for everyone. You got to be happy. Everyone's saying your name at this point.
I know. And as someone pointed out, like, oh, is that you in the game? I'm like, what? Oh, no, it's DREAD. No, if my name ever goes in the game, it has to be DRED, because it actually does not refer to Dread as far as fear. But whatever. If it happens, it happens.
Would be sweet. Alright, so let's see. I want to talk about the Season 10 results. Have you compiled stuff? Have you pulled it all together?
Oh, yeah. I put it in the wondrous organizational of Slack for you.
Well, I do not have that. Go ahead and start talking about it. I'll try and get it.
All right, so I guess it started season 7, I think it was, when about season 2 after the CC nerfs went in, and everyone's like, "Oh, my Witch Doctor's useless." Like, nope, still good. And basically, what I did is I took the top 1,000 of hardcore and softcore for each class, seasons 1 through 7 at the time, and then I for GR solo clears only. So no 2-man, no 3-man, no 4-man, because then it gets skewed. It gets harder to keep track of things, and the data, just separating the data, just becomes an exponential nightmare to do for one person. So I did it for solo only, and I just want to see which class would have the overall highest GR clear. So for a while, and it continues for both softcore and hardcore, the progression has been going up at what we've been experiencing every season, at least until probably from season 9 to 10, when everything finally started leveling off a little bit. Every class was going up anywhere between low end of 6, high end of 10, greater rift, average level tiers per season. So now we're at the point where this season, at the end of season 10 that just passed, the Wizard is still the top in softcore for solo runs, the 5th season in a row. But the average went down from last season. They're at like a 92.5 average for the top 1,000. Hardcore Demon Hunters are the highest for the 3rd season in a row. They're at a 78.5 average GR level. So that doesn't mean the other classes aren't doing badly. It just means that they're just under. So, for instance, I'll just go through them quickly. Softcore, seasonal, I remember solo. Barbarians are at 79. Crusaders are at 85. Demon Hunters are at a 90, basically almost 91. Monks are 80 or 81, basically 82. Witch Doctors are at 84 and a half, and then, like I said, Wizards are at 92 and a half. So that Archon is strong. That beam is forceful. And then on the hardcore seasonal side, again, solo, Barbarians are at 65, almost 65 and a half. Crusaders are 64, basically 65. Demon Hunters are, again, 78 and a half. Monks are 67 and a half. Witch Doctors 68 and a half. Wizards are 72. So you see it, and I've been going back and forth. I'm going to make the data public. Am I not going to? Because it's a lot of data. Because up until Season 10, it's 2,000 data points per class per season. So this thing has 120, if I'm doing my math right, has 120,000 data points in it. And now every season from this point going forward is going to have 14,000 data points per season, because now we're going to throw the Necromancer in here.
Right.
Cannot tell you how happy I was when I finally added all the Necromancer stuff in here. Like, yeah, another color. Basically Excel nerding out and everything. But it's exciting, and it got me thinking, like, I guess we can kind of transition, because now everyone knows. I mean, all that work, and now everyone knows where all the classes are at this point. But since you've had a lot of experience, especially before the season go live, in the Necromancer's current state and your thoughts on group meta, where do you think the Necromancer is going to come in at the end of Season 11?
Well, before we jump to that, I did want to at least discuss why we might see a little bit of what we're seeing just from the results of this compilation of things. I think it's particularly interesting how much the Demon Hunter jumped on hardcore. 99% I'm sure you can attribute that to the prevalence of the Shadow set and just how safe that build was at high level Greater Rifts. So it was easier for Demon Hunters to push into higher Greater Rifts, and also to tighten up that average too, because, you know, the set had a lot of power in terms of just really good single target output and elite killing, but at the same time you also weren't risking your character in order to do that. So I think even, you know, the common folk, as you might call them, some people like to say the word casual, could then push into Greater Rifts that they had never imagined previously. Also coupled with the fact that primals were a very enticing draw, and Demon Hunters, for their meta build, had one of the easiest ways to get a primal weapon. So I feel like that totality of circumstances pushed a lot of people to want to play Demon Hunter, especially also because they were in the 4-man meta consistently throughout the season. So all those things combined just make it seem very, very obvious that there was no doubt that the Demon Hunter would be a very popular choice. And even just looking at how much they jumped in average on softcore from last season to this season, 6.5 points of Greater Rift increase on average. That's huge. And then seeing it take off even further on hardcore, just it shows you what one item can do. Literally, one quiver, one legendary power. And you would think that because the Wizards are still so damn strong, so incredibly powerful, that you would see the same reflection from softcore to hardcore in terms of them just being irresolutely on top. But that playstyle is a lot more challenging, or just maybe scary to keep alive. You could have Lala on here talking about that for about a good hour and a half, about how she would basically cry every time that she procced, because she just thought life was going to be over. Like, wizard life is scary, man. And it's really interesting just to see that, you know, power does not trump completely, at least when it comes to the hardcore side of things. Like, you still gain a lot from having a build that can be moderately powerful or very powerful, but also very hardy, very sticky.
Yeah, and to just, I guess, continue the gravy train for Demon Hunters, everyone, like, Shadows is the new hotness, but I think what prevailed, and I'm not 100% guaranteed, but UE grenades was still the highest GR clear, I think, at least on softcore side in the season.
It was the same
And
for
that
hardcore too.
and that build is even tankier because you have the ballista, you get your wraps in. Like the only thing you can't fit in because it just doesn't is the Aquila. You can't work that in just because of how the gear setup works between that and your character and your cube. But like that build has is basically all mobility and easy. It's easy to do. It's basically another one of those basic, pop vengeance and just do grenades all day. Well, the only problem with grenades is just making sure they land in an area that they don't fall off a cliffside, and there goes your damage, literally down the cliff. Right. But yeah, definitely. That's why Demon Hunter spikes so much, and Holy Point getting the little tweak, and that's all it really takes.
Yeah, I wouldn't, and I would still contend with you. I don't want to totally go just all Demon Hunter talk show, but I would contend with you that the more important change really was Shadows, because that's, I think, what tightened up the average. Like, UE is an amazing Greater Rift build, but it's not going to get you, like... I mean, I guess there are speed versions of it out there for sure, but I don't feel like as many people were speed farming with it this season as they were pushing Shadows with that sort of setup. Because, like Replay saying in chat, too, it just hits all those things that you want, like mobility, power, toughness. And so I think just from the popularity of it and Shadows just sort of being kind of the redheaded stepchild for so long and now getting its time to shine, I think a lot of people just wanted that novelty. And when you bring up, I think especially when you bring up the low end, that's kind of what helps really get that increase in the graph curve.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the low end being, and I think it was like an under 10-minute 90.
Jeez.
At the end of the season.
That's just crazy.
It was great. Yeah, it was.
One thing that I also, as a Crusader, wanted to point out was it's really peculiar. They're middle of the pack in softcore and like nearly bottom of the pack with Barbarians on hardcore. Actually, they are bottom of the pack. They're a little below the Barbarian average. And one of the best like hardcore players, at least in the Americas, is a Crusader. He like often tops the entire world ranks with his Crusader. It's just peculiar to me that maybe simply because Crusaders are not in the 4-player meta, they have that unpopularity. But with Blessed Hammer stuff being as strong as it is, I'm just surprised that you don't see as many improvements as you would have for Crusaders. Like, they're going down in average in softcore, and then they're barely ticked up in hardcore.
Yeah, is that... I'm not familiar on how the build is set up and how it functions, but could it be the fact that it may not be the mobility of the Crusader itself, but the mobility of the damage? I guess setup is the better term. You're basically go from this pack from pack A to pack B, get your hammers going, and then the secondary thing, is it a very blanking on the affix.
Area damage?
Yes, thank you. Area damage issue, because that is still an issue for all the calculations per mob and everything. That's still being an issue for the 4-player meta.
I mean,
it could be one or both.
It's definitely why it's not in 4-player, because it lags the game to hell. Like, even worse than Firebat WD currently does. So that's, I mean, if it didn't, I honestly believe that Crusaders would be a strong part of being one of the DPS clearers through the Greater Rift. Maybe not the boss killer, but definitely one of the clearers, but it's just way too laggy. On solo, though, it's fine. And I think maybe one of the hard parts about it is maybe the build takes some... Maybe the gearing requirements are a little bit difficult, because it can be squishy, but once you have everything kind of in its right place, in terms of like all the affixes rolled properly, all the correct affixes, it should sustain itself. And people have done Greater Rift 100 plus with it, so it's not like it can't exist in those Greater Rifts and survive. But maybe it just takes more skill than people want to invest, because the return on investment is that you're playing by yourself for a majority of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Fortunately, the game has really gone to that whole multiplayer aspect because now support class versus DPS versus in between whatever role you're fitting. I mean, it gives an element to the game, so it's not just everyone just is in a DPS race. Either you kill it or it kills you type deal. Some people like that. Some people don't. Some people like what we have. To each his own at this point.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the time to have that kind of discussion. But it does take a toll on the classes. If you don't have something that can be part of that 4-player group, you kind of get ostracized to the sidelines. And it doesn't mean the class isn't capable. It's just that it's not capable enough to the meta. That word. So.
The meta. The buzzword. Yeah, it'll be. I just wonder. So this kind of loops back around to your initial question, which was where does the Necromancer fit into all this by the time Season 11 hits, and mainly just where will it fall with Greater Rifts. I think it'll be interesting to see how much the Necromancer can affect the meta in terms of either pulling one of the current staples out, so if it replaces a support monk, or if it comes in and can enable another class to get in. Maybe there's some interaction that we haven't even seen yet with a Necromancer where suddenly their corpse explosion is way better if you have a Crusader. I can't think of an interaction, but imagine if there's some skill that when combined with CE or when combined with Death Nova or Bone Spear makes it just unbelievable, and we haven't really seen it yet. So I'm curious, as people continue to test and find new interactions and mess with the different sets, and as the sets themselves get tweaks and things like that, when Inarius stops being kind of the top dog, I wonder where it will shake out in terms of the meta, if the Necro will even be part of the 4-player meta. It does seem like there's some potential for boss killing. A lot of people have been testing using like the command skeleton with the Bone Ringer because it continues to scale its damage against the same target. So that is perfect for those long fights against the Rift Guardians. But just looking at solo, I would imagine that the Necromancer should slide in. I mean, you have all these data points, right? So you can almost predict a median between the lowest and the highest point. I want to say that maybe they'll fall right into the middle of that if the job is accomplished correctly and put correctly in quotes. But they could also come in potentially high. Looking at Inarius right now, if it were to stay exactly as it was, they are competitive with essentially every other class in terms of high clears. Obviously way ahead of Barb because they're actually clearing 100s easily. But I'm not sure that that's going to stay. And then I wonder where the other ones are falling, because people also have done 90 plus with some Trag'Oul setups, and it doesn't look like Trag'Oul is going to change. So at least you can say there'll be some 90s being done. But then again, that's high side. So where the average falls in, I'm not really sure.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming, I guess, to continue poke your brain, and me poking your brain, maybe informing the viewers and the listeners, are any of the particular sets and all the builds you've tried and everything you've done, are any of them any particularly hard to gear for? Like, none of them are LON builds or anything like that, where it's like, you have to get a good LON's ancients and all that kind of fun stuff. Are they pretty easy to gear?
I would say yes, actually. I think that's probably one of the benefits of the Necromancer right now. If you look at the totality of what they have available as tools, they have 4 class sets, right? And they all fulfill the same slots. So if you're gambling at Kadala and you're trying to get shoulders, you have a chance of getting 1 out of the 4. So it's not like you have to go here or go there, make a choice between, if I gamble this slot, I'm not going to potentially get these Inarius shoulders versus, this Invoker's bracers or something like that. But, so they have the same items for all their sets, and there are only a few sides, there are only a few two-handed sides, there are only a few phylacteries. So between all the different spots that actually modify builds significantly, or what's the word I'm looking for? That in a way that matters, I guess. There actually isn't too much to look for.
Yeah, it's kind of like the DH with the point or gemstone. It's a 50-50 chance of getting one or the other, even though it doesn't feel like it when you're rolling for those. But for Carly's point, but yeah, because I think that's a big determinant factor. It's always the gearing. It's how quickly, because I think to go backwards to prove a point going forwards, I think that's also why the Crusader is lacking, because it's an LON for the Thorns, if I remember correctly. It's tanky. It's like the solo build for Crusader, but it probably takes the longest to get everything perfected. So if I'm correct in my assumptions, going back forward, if the Necromancer, if any or if all the sets are easy to gear for, and there's a relatively easy learning curve, I would say, for the Necro. It's definitely a medium skilled class. You can't just jump into it because there's three resources. There really are three resources. You really have to treat everything. You have to really figure out what you're going to do, because if you ignore one, you're going to feel pain, because you're going to be missing something. You're not going to get anywhere near where you think you should be. Yeah, I mean, if I had to guess, I would say, also keeping in mind people stocked up tens of thousands of crafting and augments that are already at level 100 for the switch over. So basically they rolled the Necro, got the gear, got it perfected, slammed on the augments, and here they go, because they're overpowered with Paragon being at 2, 3, 4,000. So we have to factor that in. But I can definitely see Necro being middle pack, maybe even capturing that third or second spot solo wise in the season if everything is done right, and they do a little bit of tweaks to help like Rathma and the skeletons, for instance, so everything can really go. And I guess if I could just pose one more question to you, it kind of goes back to the 4-group meta. Up until this point, we've had 6 classes, so 6 classes, 4 people. It could be in a group. 2 classes usually get kicked out unless you're running like a dual monk setup or whatever it was back in the day. Mm-hmm. But now that we have 7 classes, do you think that there may be 2 group metas? There may be a particular 4-player here and a particular 4-player here, and they may be able to coexist together because they're equal. It's just you need 2 monks, a Necro, and a Crusader, because you need to pull stuff for the Necro, and you need a little bit more healing versus the standard makeup that we have now. Do you see something like that being able to happen?
I would say yes, but not for the reason that you potentially are proposing. I think when you are starting to really look into it, like this was something that was starting to occur a little bit, I want to say with a few of the more dedicated 4-man groups, but you actually had 2 different metas based on what you were trying to do. You had the pushing meta, which looked very typical to what everyone knew, which was the support monk, support barb, boss killer with a wizard or DH, and apparently the wizard ended up being kind of the top dog in that established paradigm. Mm-hmm. Although again, some finagly things going on there with going into adventure mode and getting stacks for Archon, but that's not going to be a thing in season 11. So we'll see if the wizard persists as the top RG, especially with Necro potentially coming for that crown. But the Law and Witch Doctor to round it out, killing stuff throughout the Rift, right? So that was like, you're going for your GR 120s or something. That's what you're going with. However, there was a sub-meta, if you will, for speed, where it was literally 3 wizards and a support monk, which is called like the Shrine Monk, basically. It's actually using that one weapon with a legendary power that gives you a random shrine effect, which is like, who uses that? It's crazy. But they found a use for it. So I'm actually curious that the thing that you're coming up with is potentially something you might see. There could be, I think there will always be a top, right? There's always going to be that one meta, that one composition that you have to play that if you're trying to compete for rank 1, clear for whatever server you're on. However, you might see sub-metas with people trying to say, well, I know this won't get me to the top, but it's a really fun and easy to put together grouping for just going through a bunch of 90s and getting experience and gem ups and things like that. So, and maybe you'll see multiple versions of that, like you're saying, because now you have one more class to throw into the mix. It'll be curious. I think maybe one of the things to consider is who rolls what. So how many people are going to roll a ton of Necromancers? We'll probably see a lot of them, but then who's rolling additionally a Barb as well, or a Monk as well? Like, what's going to be available, I guess, is what I'm trying to say for groups to get stuff together. I feel like when there's a need, people usually will fall on the sword to say, okay, I'll be the one to get the Z Barb because we need it. But if there's just a ton of Necros running around, you probably will see a sub-meta where people just try to find a role for the Necro because there's so many available. and not many people playing the other things that could be better.
Yeah, like who's gonna play DH for the 6th season in a row? As my hand begins to go up, and then I'm like, I don't know. So
yeah, actually, what are you thinking? Are you gonna switch to Necromancer or?
I mean, I did get a Necro up to 70. I did play around. I got sets. I feel, you know what it is? I think I've come to the realization I am not a person that can come up with a feasible build and enjoy it and have it work. Just give me the copy and paste. I'll work my way around it. I'll understand it better because I'm not trying to do like, you know, the meme with like all the formulas going past your head. Like like know your role and play it. So I know I'm not that like I'm not that person, but I can understand why this works and be able to build my own iteration around it. So if something does kind of pop up in the next week and a half where it's stable and, you know, hopefully Never we're looking at you in chat. A round of hotfixes go through and everything kind of levels out with the sets and people are really able to say, okay, this feels balanced, this feels like good, it feels on point, this works, and I can get up to a GR70 relatively, you know, some work. You don't want it to be easy, but get up to that point, maybe I'll go Necro. If I don't, maybe I'll go DH and I'll be that guy who falls on the sword unbeknownst to myself for, you know, the small little groups that I have. And Shepard looking at you. Yeah, and just do that and just, you know, get help. And again, you know what? No one says you can't roll up a second character in a season. The only except your Matt's cry the moment you make a second character.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing though.
That's always that.
If you're trying to be competitive, right? If you're trying to really be at the top of your class, any sort of bifurcation in your season dilutes your ability to be at your best. Because if you're not playing, this is the issue that I ran into last season, right? Like my group, Lala, Minion, all those, they made fun of me so much because I was like at the beginning of the season, oh yeah, I'm gonna roll a support monk. I'll play that every now and again. But every time I tried to get on that monk, I just realized this is time not getting a primal that I could need for my demon hunter. This is time that I'm not getting a demon hunter specific drop. And every time I get a monk piece, I'm like, well, I'm glad I got that, I guess, but I really want more demon hunter stuff because my initial end goal is to be the top demon hunter. So it's weird that sometimes variety helps you get through a season, and sometimes it's necessary based on what your clan can provide, what the community can provide. But man, it does eat into your goals quite a bit.
Yeah, it's just that dastardly word where if we had live effects, I put my hands together, spread them apart, a rainbow would appear, and you would see efficiency and glittery, bright blue text appear, and it's like, oh, that word. Like I feel your burden always, because now that we've had these consistently 2.5 months to 3 month seasons. Taking 2 weeks out to do a subclass is literally 2 weeks worth of grinding, and you're probably and you say in the back of your head, if you did that and you look back, like I probably lost like 2 or 3 GR levels because I didn't get upgraded gear, I didn't get the Paragon, I didn't get the higher augments, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
So it's hard. It'll be a hard decision.
Yeah. Oh yeah. that's really all there is to say about it is yes, correct. But yeah, I'm curious. Thank you again for pulling all that data together. I'll definitely be interested to see what it all looks like. Because I also wonder, maybe this is another question you don't maybe need to have the answer for right now, but here's something to consider. Having a 7th class, but the same potential players that are all, you know, contributing to these 1,000 marks per class. Now you might be spread a little more thin. I wonder if you'll see averages go down for people who are traditionally like wizards or WDs or even being pulled from other main stats. If you'll see their averages go down in lieu of the Necromancer coming in and, you know, doing as well or as however it's supposed to do. So that could also be another effect that we may not even be accounting for. But by the time the season's all said and done, you'll be like, oh wow, I guess when a lot of people are playing one class, sure, their average is likely to go way up. And maybe you'll actually be able to see when everyone's not a DH what happens.
Yeah, I would definitely say that it comes into it. That's more of a psychological deal, definitely, because and I guess the only way you would really, I could really reflect it in the data, and you guys should be able to look at it now, would to be look at the high lows. Because if the gap between the high and the low, and again, this is a general assumption, but there's many other things that go into it. If one class like the DH, like I said, 90 and they went up to hundreds, that's a 10 GR average gap. But if you go to another class and it's 15, 17 GR gap, that means the higher level players got their high ranks and then they stopped, but there weren't enough of those higher level people pushing, so that's why the GR average lengthened out. So the push and pull between, as you were saying, like are wizards finally going to be fed up and they're going to go play Necro, and then the wizard gap is going to grow, and then their average is going to go down, and Necro is going to spike. There's a lot you can pull from this, but you can never be 100% certain. But definitely what you said, I would look to that in the data is the gap. If it's a tighter gap, means there's more people there, more people understand it and know how to do the build, and they basically they get it, for a phrase. And for ones that have a much bigger gap, not as many people get it, and therefore there's a bigger gap, and you can say not as many people are playing that class. Again, general assumption, there are other things to get into it. But yeah, definitely what you were saying and how I responded is how you could probably look at it as face value.
Yeah, well, definitely we'll, of course, have you back for the Season 11 clues. It seems so far away now. I guess that's one thing to also consider too, right? So you were just talking about this, 3-month seasons. July 20th is the start of Season 11, so that is slated to end like pretty much right before BlizzCon really kicks off, like that last sort of weekend of October, beginning of November. Like you essentially just have the end of October, Thanksgiving, and then BlizzCon in the next like 2 weeks after that season ends. So it's kind of interesting timing. I think isn't this hitting on the exact same timing that we had for last BlizzCon? They ended the season early.
Yeah, the end of the season, I think it's a little earlier, but the other suspicious thing, because Gamescom is, I think, a week or two later. It's like the end of August this year. And Gamescom, generally, is, I don't think it was as much last year. I think last year was just overhyped for Diablo and everything, and then everyone kind of got a stick up their ass about it. But anyways, moving on. Yeah, Gamescom is late August, and that's kind of right before the season will be slated to end, if everything works out. No, July, August. So that would actually be the time that we would see a PTR, if not a week or two before then, for the next season, that being Season 12. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll get goodies shown to us then, and then we'll get to play around with them at BlizzCon. Who knows? Yeah. Tinfoil hats. Get them on.
Always, man, always. All right, I guess we'll leave that for another time. We can always speculate some more. But for things that we definitely know, there was a blog post that you posted into the Slack channel earlier today, and then, of course, got socialed around everywhere. We have the official notes for the Season 11 that's coming, and that means you'll know exactly which Haedrig's gifts you're getting, exactly what the conquests are, and exactly what the rewards are, too. So I actually did pull that screenshot. So on the stream right now, for those of you listening, are the transmogs that you'll be able to get, which are the same sort of pants and boots that have been going around, the Conqueror's transmog. The very interesting and decadent gold treasure goblin portrait frame. And then, of course, this really cool sort of water dragon Leviathan looking thing.
It's an emerald dragon, so it's even more harking to it's harking. It's going to be your spirit animal all the time. Yes.
Actually, I'm pretty excited for this one because I feel like I have to transmog all my gear blue now. I need to have this pet out all the time. Like, I need it.
Become the Leviathan.
Absolutely. So those are pretty cool looking. That's what you can get with going through your chapters 1 through 4, and then some of your upgrades to that portrait frame will come from doing tiers beyond that: Slayer, Conqueror, Destroyer, all that good stuff. And then speaking of Conqueror, that tier still exists. That is where you will be able to get additional stash tabs. And the way to look at it now, because a lot of people are confused in terms of they got their 2 from the Necromancer, so does that eat into their max 10 and stuff like that? The way to look at it is that there are 6 tabs that you can buy with gold, in-game gold. There are the 2 tabs that you get from the Necromancer, and there are 4 additional ones that you can earn through seasonal play, through the season journey, and that's 1 per season journey. So you get 1 season journey per season. Getting to the Conqueror tier and doing all the objectives there will earn you that stash tab, and so you just need to do that for 4 seasons, and you'll be at the max of 12 stash tabs. Does that make sense?
More or less.
Okay.
And with season 10, I can say I finally hit that mark. There were I think it was season 6 and 7 I took off, and I didn't get it. But now I'm fully stashed.
Absolutely. Stashed up. And are you fully stashed, as in like it's all full?
No, I was quite good. I deleted characters. I moved stuff to individual characters. I've condensed all my DH gear to 1 DH and like 2 stash tabs. I think I have, for as many stashes as I am using, I have completely empty. So I am proud of that.
I hate you. Can I borrow some space?
It'll cost you an arm and a leg, and that is a cheap necro joke.
Badunch. I wish I had like a what are those things called? I'm not gonna remember. A little crash thing.
You wish you had a funny bone.
Oh, God. I guess someone has to make up for the bad jokes that Neinball usually drops.
I was about to say, Nas gonna be proud of me when he hears that one.
Gosh. Although it's funny, when the Necromancer, either right before it dropped or when it had dropped, there was a nice thread of bone and necro puns between Nine and I think Dainty, and a couple other people are hopping in there too. And I was just like face palming reading them all, just like, you guys are too good at these. Why? So bad.
Yeah.
Rim shot, that's what it was. Thanks, long shot.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Oh.
It was fun.
Good times, good times. All right, so those are your rewards for the season, and then also in line with rewards in the seasonal journey, of course, as you can always do with chapters 2, 3, and 4 being completed, you earn your Haedrig's gift sets, your free set for all the different classes. Again, this can only be claimed once, so you have to choose wisely, and that's between both hardcore and softcore. So let's say you start your season softcore and you're like, I want to switch to hardcore. You will not have that chance to do a Haedrig's gift again, so make sure you start with the mode you really care about, which should be hardcore. Right, Dred? Okay, perfect. That sounded like agreement. Good. Let's go through a quick listing of what each class is getting for their Haedrig's gifts. I think we did this previously, but now we're closer to the season anyway, and it's official now. So, Barbarian, Wrath of the Wastes, which is great for their high-level Greater Rift pushes. Crusader, Roland's Legacy, so rip Crusaders. Demon Hunter, Unhallowed Essence, amazing start, amazing.
See, let me see again. Going back before, it's like, why that set? Oh, that's an eat. Continue. I'm sorry. Lamenting.
You're gonna start a DH again. I know it. Monk, Raiment of 1,000 Storms. So again, they're kind of high pushing. Although an interesting fact, and this is kind of something that's kind of interesting because it's not pulled out in your data. You're just pulling the numbers, but you don't necessarily see what generates those numbers. There were a lot, at least on the hardcore side, a lot of Lawn LTK monks that were topping the boards. So it's kind of interesting. Maybe just because the season was a little bit longer, it gave people a chance to really get those builds together, and it's way safer for hardcore over Raiment. I was just kind of blown away a little bit. There were actually a pretty decent mix of stuff in the top 10 for monks, but just a lot of Lawn LTK. So Raiment, which of course is great for monks with their high pushing, especially on the softcore side of things. Necromancer on the list here now, of course. Bones of Rathma. So like you were saying, hopefully the skeleton, that 24 hit thing gets reverted or changed, because it'd be nice to have some mitigation for your pets so they could actually stick around and help out. And that would certainly help this set. And then Witch Doctor, Helltooth Harness, and Wizards Talrash's Elements. And both of those sets, Helltooth is a little out of favor, I would say, because we're seeing some Zuni Masa builds that were performing well last season. We're seeing, of course, the Lawn Spirit Barrage. Even Eric Hair Firebats was still very popular. So Helltooth, even though it was like one of the heyday builds back when the Helltooth Gargantuan, kind of feels like it's passe at this point. It's kind of old school. And then Wizards are loving Tall Rashes as a start because that's just always feeding into pretty much all their builds as they do their synergy and mixing and matching. So
yeah, Tal Raja, the mother set.
The mother. Honestly, across the board, these are not bad sets at all for every class.
I mean, especially again, Demon Hunters. If it ain't Shadows, Unhallowed is. It's so easy because again, it's like okay, you do Unhallowed, you get your Deadmans, you get your Yangs, any Yangs. 45 Yangs later, and you're off to the races.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe then. But yeah, no, it's true. And plus, like you were saying, right, UE Grenades was something at the end of the season as well, and potentially could do just as well early season too. It doesn't require too much. So having UE is solid. DHs are still going to want that Shadows. They're going to be the boss killer. Just across the board, it's going to be an interesting one because I feel like you mentioned the conquests on the easier side and the sets are on the more powerful side. So I think everyone's going to be off to the races. You'll see the conquest boards fill up relatively quickly. You'll see everybody gear up relatively quickly. And then depending on just the length of the season, it could be a really exciting one. And the Necro being that X factor.
Yeah, it's going to be... It's... Well, I would say it's like the season when Ancients came out, but that was actually, technically season 1. It would be kind of like I guess when the CC nerfs came in. Everyone's wondering like, what's the meta going to be? How is it going to shift? This, that, and the third. We're kind of like in another one of those like almost like reset seasons where we don't exactly know what the solo is going to be because it's more or less determinate on the group play. We don't know how the group play is going to be because it's a new class, not just a new set or something. So it's going to be interesting when the season's over and I'm doing the data work again. It's going to be very interesting to see where everything flushes out.
Mm-hmm. And actually that leads us into a good segue to further discuss the Necromancer because like we've been sort of hinting at along the way, it came out and it needed to, and it's great that it's here now because everyone's gotten to mess around with it. Again, worth mentioning that Inarius just came out of the gates hot and heavy. That was the set I was most interested in because I love the general nature of it. You just take bone armor and everything else is turned on from there. So I was hoping I'd be able to go with bone armor and then go with Death Nova being enabled by the bone armor. And so that's kind of been the build I've been working on to some moderate success perhaps. What's particularly interesting though is that Travis Day was in a couple of different places over the last few days. He was in Bloodshed stream. I heard he was in Riker's stream. And he was also on Reddit answering some questions. And there's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of like passionate opinions on the Necromancer, where it should go from here, how it can be improved. And there are definitely a few sort of highlight issues that I think it's worth us taking some time to discuss here. Because we might have some other thoughts on it too, but at least just to highlight for the community sort of where Necro's at and where it potentially could go, or at least where some of the devs are thinking it might go. So we just talked about this, right, with the command skeletons. They intentionally came out with, and the golems are in the same realm too, any of the pets with hit points. They intentionally came out with this fantasy of they have 24 hits before they cease to exist. And the idea here is that, a skeleton is a skeleton. Like, it's brittle. It can be raised to become powerful for you because the Necromancer wills it so, but it should die at some point. And so they didn't want the pets to be sort of these everlasting gods, which I guess is weird because the Necromancer has a fantasy of, like, the master of the army of the dead. Like, his army should be never ending and continuing to come up and kill stuff. So a lot of people ran into issues where their pets were getting into high-level greater rifts, and any sort of floor spam, right? Any poison enchanted, plagued, molten, any of that stuff was just shredding your pets. And when the pets provide not only your damage output, but your defense, forget about it. Like, Rathma is not useful anymore. Even some of the other pet builds that people were building out of Inarius, or like, there's now a blood one, but that one's kind of good because it's skeletal mages, which don't have the hit point thing. So until those pets get fixed, right now the boss killer spec of Necromancers is kind of in an odd spot. But what Travis made no promises, but he kind of made it seem as if they're willing to revert that fantasy of going to more towards like, hey, your enforcer actually works the way it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's that pestilence set. So a lot of the sets in general are kind of under scrutiny from being not as powerful as Inarius. And maybe we should talk about Inarius first, because the biggest issue with that is the tornado, which you get from the 6-piece, just procs everything nonstop. So if you have a Mirror Knight gem, if you have a Wreath of Lightning, a Pain Enhancer to sort of further that, it was just everything procced all the damn time. And I guess that wasn't supposed to be the case. So Bone Tornado sort of came out the gate without any scaling to its proc coefficient, and that is something that will go in as a change, and that's definitely going to tweak Inarius, bring it down, I would assume, by a few different levels of power, magnitude, etc. How far down? Unclear. Like I was saying, they've been farming, or at least clearing, I should say, Greater Rift 100 plus in Inarius. Other builds are in the 90s-ish, maybe creeping up towards that 100 mark as people figure out and make them better. I'll be curious to see when it happens, because it'll force people to no longer play copycat. When you look at the leaderboards, like the top 1,000 marks potentially, without looking through everything to be sure, we're just all Inarius, because everyone's like, well, if the top rank is getting that, I got to use it too and see how it works and just keep going with it. So,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's where individuality and builds gets back in, because let's say proc rate is 100%, they knock it down to 50. It's a big chunk, but it's still a coin flip, so it's not that bad. It's like it doesn't or it doesn't. So unlike Kadala or Yoshi, it may seem more like a 55-60% chance. That's not that bad. You may switch out a gem because, like, okay, if I'm not getting the guarantee from this, let me use something that's maybe a little bit more on the stable end for my defense outside of the proc, which is something the wizard class has been trying to do forever, because critical mass and all the things going over there ruined our proc rates. So for eternally from that point till now. So this is just kind of like a microcosm of that. And yeah, I mean, unless they make it something absurd where it actually starts making the set questionable to use to begin with, you'll probably see people running the build basically more or less as it is, but you'll have more individuality in your gems and or maybe one or two slot options to make it a little bit more. It may be a little bit less on the damage, but a little bit more on the defense as far as stability wise. I mean, that's probably what's going to happen, probably guaranteed at this point. So
I think
just do a little touch on that.
I think that's a fair assessment, especially when you think of what the Mirror Knight was providing. It was a great single target, because the way the multiplication was working, the Mirror Knight is a ridiculous single target Holy Smite, and then that's multiplied through that debuff that the Bone Tornado puts on all the mobs. So you could just get crazy numbers, and with it proccing literally nonstop, not only were you getting crazy damage output, but also the healing, which is nothing to scoff at. It's a 3% heal off of those strikes, and so when you're getting 10 of those strikes, that's 30% healing, which means you need toughness, but at the same time, as long as you have a baseline of it, you're healing right back up to full, as long as there's enough enemies around to be hit by that smite. So I think I do agree with you that if you're starting to see less of those procs coming out, then it's going to either make you consider changing the gem, or still taking it and just knowing you'll get less uptime on it, but you might have to accommodate for it. You said it perfectly. So I think that's probably the reality of what we'll see there. And I guess the flip side to that coin is other sets that are coming in a little under-tuned or under the radar, if you will. It's like the Pestilence set. That one was really popular in the beta because people were coming up with those crazy blood builds where they were killing themselves and just doing insane stuff with Corpse Lance. I loved it. It was a cool time. But I guess it's no longer a thing, or it's not powerful enough of a thing. So I think what we'll see, based on what Travis was kind of mentioning, was the Pestilence set was sort of slated to be the speed farm set, where you would just clear the screen, almost like your Corpse Lance acting as a multi-shot. When you hit that button, with Land of the Dead especially, it's just everything on the screen explodes. and I think that was kind of the intention there, but it's not quite hitting home for whatever reasons. So we'll see some number tuning probably on that one, maybe just more power, or maybe even some legendaries that are existing to help that out potentially move up. Although I would be remiss to say that that could be the case, because there are some blood builds and some other builds like the Inarius setup that's meta that use Corpse Lance and potentially even work in the shoulders that have the legendary power that help out Corpse Lance. So maybe they don't mess with that legendary itself, but maybe it's more changes to the numbers on the set specifically.
Yeah, well, I guess just quickly, how do you? I mean, well, there are other classes with shoulder affixes, okay? Because I was going like, how many other classes have shoulder affixes that you would need in a set? I mean, there aren't that many. I mean,
back when the Barb was good, you had like the Hoda build, which actually used the Fury of the Ancients, and what was it? The Raycor had what are they called? Vile Wards, which helped out Furious Charge and stuff.
Yeah.
And Mantle of Channeling was kind of a thing. There are a lot of shoulders that you just don't see. The shoulder slot is a weird slot. I mean, then maybe that's a conversation for a different day. But it's
like I didn't want to tangent, but I'm just like thinking like there's some weird affix slots for the Necro, but I guess that all the classes have them one way or another. So.
I guess the thing that kind of bugs me about the Necro, and this is more, we'll dig more into what Travis had to say, but just sort of an overall look at things, is it becomes really tough. I think maybe it's done on purpose, and I guess it's good to have tough decisions, but because everything overlaps everything currently, it makes it really hard to make good choices, or to at least make choices that feel satisfactory, because it always feels like you're giving up something else, and sometimes that's rewarding because you're like, well, I gave this up but my build still works, or you give it up and you're like, man, I just really wish I could fit something else in. But there's so many powers that are pants powers or boots powers or shoulder powers, and all the sets are the traditional 6 pieces. There are no like off pieces, and there's like one belt, Dainty's binding, that's really good. There's no bracers, so it's weird that the pieces that don't have any overlap with the 6-piece sets are very scant. There's like nothing there to really choose from, but all the pieces that do overlap, you have tons of powers that could be interesting and just maybe don't see use, except one of them in the cube, one lucky piece.
Yeah, it's kind of, I feel you, because like again, Dainty's binding and everything like that, you always feel like you're compromising in a sense, and you just want to burst a set. Just let me be a little bit OP, okay? I'm asking for a lot. Let me just be a little OP, all right? Is it too hard to ask? But the class as well is built with an updated philosophy, as I said in the beginning of the show. So every decision matters, but that's because every decision is just that much better than the other classes back in the day. Even after all the revisions, it's just much tighter. So I guess that's the balance that you must maintain.
The balance, keeping it in line with the theme. All right, so then up next in terms of things that Travis was mentioning, the blood set, which actually is starting to gain a lot of traction within the community. I've seen a few builds. I've seen the pet blood set build come up with, like I was mentioning, the skeletal mages. I believe life support is the rune there. That's the blood rune. We're seeing the blood lancer, which is like a corpse lance build out of the blood set, and all of those are starting to perform rather admirably. So it's kind of interesting that they're also looking to make positive changes towards the blood set, which would be potentially reducing the increased health cost on skills in the blood set. So that would just make that build even easier, or make that setup even easier to play, because you're not sacrificing as much in order to get the increased power output. So that's kind of exciting. That set is still scary as hell as a hardcore player. It was the first set that I got as a Necromancer, just to tangent a little. And I was like, well, I have to use this because I want to farm other things. But goddamn, my life is just in peril all the time. I think I gave this stream a heart attack on multiple occasions, just because I would bottom out health and just be like, don't worry guys, we're not going to die. We got the Sunstone, which is giving us all this damage reduction. And like one mob would come over and hit me, and it was still enough damage to proc me. Just such a nightmare.
You proc and then realize 5 seconds later you procced and like, oh, I need to run.
Yeah, that proc is not very obvious. That's if I had to lobby, a change that I would like, it would be like some sort of massive glow of light. Be like, hey, by the way, you're procced. Or like, show me like a dancing skeleton or some shit. Get my attention, because I can't tell unless I'm looking at that right-hand corner whether that thing is going or not.
That's the next thing for the overlay. A little dancing skeleton on top of the action bar.
Just what we need. Oh, boy. So that's a quick thing that's coming, potentially. A little upgrade to the blood set. Next up...
Yep.
Sorry.
No, but just to kind of add on, like how we were talking about, the chart and the data where the Necromancer is going to lie, something like that, especially for the blood set, which is like the mobility set too. Removing the increased health costs, which means you have more. It means your health is more stable, which means you could run a little bit more offensively at the same time. That's a change that changes multiple things with that set, and all for the positive, and can raise the set up a few GR levels. Something as simple as that, where it's not even adding an item, taking away an item, changing affix or anything like that, can possibly increase the set's power. And if you increase one and it funnels into the GR pushing set, if that's the farming set, it helps get the class up a whole lot more. It's kind of like how like UE is now the farming set for shadows. Until you get to, so now this could be the same exact setup. The blood set could be just high enough to be the farming set to get you to the primal marker for any other set for Inarius, depending on how well it goes, to go for GR. So I just wanted to touch on that because it kind of brings it all back around and kind of, see how one thing can actually be changing other things and then, go from there.
I see what you're saying. No, it's a strong point that the snowball doesn't only start with your strongest set, but actually probably starts with your weakest set, to be perfectly honest, because whatever the bottom baseline is, if you get to that and you're still doing well, then it only propels you further throughout, because you think of the season as like this long marathon, and if you can start your marathon running at 5-minute pace versus like 7-minute pace and then speeding up, then you're just going to get an average better time. And so when you're speaking towards things like averages, then yeah, you're right on the money there that it will eventually raise that bar up higher. So yeah, small tweaks could make big ripple effects.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up, there was the bug with the Crisbin's ring. A lot of people had some eyes on that because it was a pretty significant thing where Crisbin's, which is a Necromancer ring that's really strong. For those of you who don't know the power on it, when you have an enemy that's just slowed, you get there's a range on this ring. I think it's 75 to 100%, but let's just pretend we have max. So you have a 100% chance to, or sorry, you have a 100% damage increase against an enemy that's slowed. If you CC it in any other way, that's a stun, a freeze, a blind. A lot of people are getting sort of the stun going with their bone armor dislocation, or freezes off of Land of the Dead with the frozen lands and things like that. It gives you triple damage against enemies. So triple whatever that percent is that you get on the ring. It's very strong. So the Necromancer has very good jewelry pieces, and this is by far the best one in my opinion. It was working on other classes, so like wizards were taking this and doing disgusting things with it.
Archon goes boom. Oh, that's way too many commas for me to count. That's a number I don't know the proper terminology for.
Yeah, how many zeros is that? It's preposterous. So that's getting a hot fix if it hasn't already been hot fixed. I was hearing that it was a thing and then it wasn't a thing anymore, so I don't know if it was like ninja hot fixed. But in any case, that's not an interaction that's supposed to happen. None of the other classes are supposed to benefit from that ring, so it is a Necromancer only ring. Even though a lot of people are saying, well, it doesn't, and myself included, we're saying it doesn't explicitly say that, but it does not matter because it is a Necromancer ring only. And it's only in the cube for Necromancers too, so it was the thing where you wore it on other classes and it worked for some reason. All right. Other things, we talked about the Inarius Bone Tornado, so adjustments there. Skeletal Mage in general is a pretty hot topic in the community. Riker had this interesting post about sort of like negative, I forget exactly what his terminology was, but sort of the idea that the casting of Skeletal Mages within the Rathma set feels bad because it's to avoid a negative situation. Like at all times you want the biggest DPS output because that's what your 6-piece is tied to, having all 10 skeletons out, therefore having the biggest multiplier for your command skeletons or your other pets. Yeah. You're always fighting against that negative condition of I only have 8, now I have 6, now I have 4. They're dropping off too quickly for me to maintain. And so you're just spamming this button, and it doesn't feel good to actually press the button. Even though it's an active playstyle, it's active for like bad reasons or reasons that don't feel relatively satisfying. So I thought that was a really interesting look into like player psychology and how we're kind of approaching it. Well, an idea that seems probably good on its face to keep Necros very, very active, pressing all your buttons, but at the same time maybe engendering a playstyle that just isn't fun. Players aren't enjoying having to press Skeletal Mage all the time. So I'll be curious. It looks like they are taking that feedback Travis was mentioning. It's something they've certainly heard a lot about, had some internal debates on as well, and are taking in that feedback. So I will be curious to see if that's one that gets a change, especially when you consider, like we talked about, right? Rathma is the Necromancer set for Haedrig, so everyone's going to get a taste of it. And if everyone hates it, I feel like that's a really bad situation to be in for Necromancer PR, if you will.
Yeah, it kind of becomes a touchy subject. Yeah, like the first thing when you were going through, it reminded me of the first time I played around with the I say updated tiles, but when I say that, I say like season 1, season 2 tiles, and like, okay, I have to get a cold, I have to get a fire, I have to get an arcane, and I have to get everything going within all the span to get the buff up, and then I have to use my probably at that point meteor, smack it, and then go through the cycle again, and it's like a 6-second rotation that you have to constantly go through. And sooner or later, I mean, for the people who played true wizard, I won't say true wizard back in the day, but in Diablo 3 with critical mass and like tornadoes and everything, that it was basically your 5-finger smashing 1 through 5 as quickly as you were gaining arcane power back. And that's the complete opposite of, say, maybe a shadow set with impale. Like, you just impale and vengeance whenever it's up, and fan of knives whenever it's up. It's a complete opposite as far as playstyle. So that's why you have to kind of hope for the middle, aim for it, and if it goes a little bit more, a little bit less, you kind of tweak it. So if it really is this great fight, because unfortunately that's a set I wanted to try, but I haven't had a chance to because, life, buying a house, and everything gets in the way. I actually really want to try the set, but if it gets down, I kind of feel what Riker's going for. It's a negative impact. Like, it should be you start off with a base, and if you can manage to get more out, you only increase. Instead of like you're working up to a max, you start on max and you get a bonus per. But it's a different way of saying the same thing. But that's what the Diablo team, I would say 95% of the time, hits perfectly. The positive buff versus the negative buff.
For sure.
So that's probably what they're looking at, and that's probably why it sticks out, because it probably doesn't fall in line with that design philosophy that they've been going with for the last couple of years, at least with Reaper Souls.
Yeah, I mean, it's novel to try to do the same thing different ways, right? Like, Frailty is sort of one of those examples. Having multiple ways to increase damage. There are only so many that are going to be particularly interesting or feel particularly satisfactory to do. And you do have to kind of throw some things out there to see if it'll stick. But I think this might be one of those instances where there will be some people that like it. Like, I'm seeing Atmospheres in chat saying like he enjoys it. And I personally I guess I probably haven't played enough Rathmas, but when I did play it, I didn't mind it as much, especially when I had things like Extended Servitude and the Julian's Love Ring to sort of help with that whole Skeletal Mage thing. Even then, it still was a lot to manage, but I didn't mind the management. Maybe that's just like my personality of not minding those sorts of things. But if it's just not hitting, if it's not sticking to the wall, then maybe it does need an adjustment.
Yeah, and also, just to touch on what you just said before I forget it, the Necromancer, for anyone who still hasn't had a chance to play it really in depth, the Necromancer is a 6-button action bar. You use every button. I mean, maybe if you have Devouring or Frailty, or maybe it's 5, but you use every action button. So that also kind of takes a toll on your ability to coordinate everything. So that may be also taking a little bit of what people are bringing up with some of the sets, or keeping things stable as far as pets are concerned.
And it could, yeah, I think maybe that's another thing to consider, is because the Necro is so active, maybe there's just an adoption period where we're not used to having that many things to do. You want to hit your wolf and forget about it for 15 seconds. You want to hit your vengeance, forget about that for like 30 seconds or so. So it could just be one of those instances where you're hitting your things really, really often, more than you're ever used to, and eventually we'll all get together. Or maybe we're all just old at this point and don't want to push things. That's why everyone wants like the aura frailty or the devouring aura, because it's one less button to push.
All I gotta say is, before the season starts, put some stocks into Razer keyboards, because there's gonna be a lot of new orders being put in.
Let's break them keyboards. Yeah, someone in chat was saying they had their CM Wizard going through like 3 keyboards. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh boy. All right. So I guess a few more changes here real quick too. One of the things that's also under fire is revive. One of the like potentially awesome marketing skills when it came to Necro being shown, being able to revive any monster in the game essentially, with some exceptions, was a really cool idea. And when they came out, holy shit, they were super strong, right? Like really unbalanced, killing and destroying everything. And I think they swung the pendulum probably a little too far to the left, or wherever the nerf direction is, to the right. And now they're not nearly as effective, to the point where I haven't seen anyone do anything with revive, to be honest. So I think that's another one that's, like I mentioned, under fire and potentially under review. So it seems pets in general might just need another pass, and it seems like maybe that's a thing that'll happen, along with the idea of Rathmas, and the core of how it works could be changed as well. So that's another thing to keep an eye on. And then last but not least, one of the things that people are curious about is Dainty's binding, because like we mentioned, it's one of the few belts. I think, is it the only? It might be the only Necromancer belt, in fact, currently. And it's really good because it gives you damage reduction, which is something that's sorely needed for the Necromancer, but it comes contingent with needing Decrepify, and people are gaining that either through having it on their bar as a skill, which is nice because it has a rune that can give you some stuns, which turns on your Crisbins, so that's important, or Tragul's Corroded Fang, which is a one-handed scythe, and it allows your Cursed Scythe on Grim Scythe to have a 100% chance to put a curse down, and so people can eventually swipe through enough enemies to get a Decrepify out there if they're not actively casting it. And so one way or another, you're activating Dainties, but a lot of people are hoping that maybe Dainties will change so that you can just activate it with any curse. Like if you're running Aura Frailty, you don't also need Decrepify to then push and have that both, get your damage increase and your damage reduction. And I think that makes a lot of sense. It also, one of the things Travis pointed out was that it could potentially enable multiple Necromancer parties to help each other out. So, if someone else is using a different curse, it could turn on your belt instead of them needing to have Decrepify, or you needing to have Decrepify, everyone needing Decrepify. So I like that idea. I think maybe, I don't know if it would make it too strong, but maybe at this point it doesn't even matter. It just seems like Dainties is kind of like de facto. If you're doing a GR that's above 60 or something, you need that. And if it's going to be that resolute, that sort of throughout all builds, then why not make it a little bit more manageable to use?
Yeah, I definitely. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's simple. It's a belt. It's a witching hour. It's a DPS belt. It's a string of ears. It's a defensive belt. So this is just a defensive belt that's tied to that. So it would be nice if it got worked to any curse, and if somehow there was a weird meta build where a meta group where it involved 2 Necros, and it was like one didn't use corpses or whatever, or if like it was like I guess the best way to describe it is that like one Necro is like the sword only, and the other Necro is like the shield. And if they work in sync, you can't kill them, and they kill you extra quick. Like one somehow somebody pumps up the other one. They just work in tandem. If something like that can work out, so that kind is I guess that's a very creative way of demonstrating you use any kind of curse for the belt. Work your way towards that. So it's fun. Yeah. It's a cool idea.
I mean, the original concept isn't that bad of an idea either, right? It's the whole idea that Decrepify is the most defensive curse, and Dainty's is a defensive belt. So with this idea that you want defense, you're getting defense. You're doubling down on it. So you're throwing out Decrepify, which is slowing the mobs and decreasing the damage they output. And then combined with Dainty's, you're also increasing your own damage mitigation. So it's this idea of defense, take these two things. But I think having the ability to combine more. No one's using Leech, so like I don't even, we don't need to throw it into the conversation, but the idea is that if you're speed running, for instance, and you just want that little extra bit of toughness so that you're not dying through your speed run, then it makes sense to, be able to take Frailty with Dainties. And I think when you're opening up options, you're actually making it less mandatory if you think about it that way. Because, and maybe that seems obvious, but let's say, for instance, you mentioned Witching Hour, right? Offense. String of Veers, defense. Dainties, if you get all the curses activating with it, it actually is the middle ground now. Instead of just being like another defensive option, now I can take, I want a little bit of offense mixed with my little bit of defense, and it's sort of the in-between.
Yeah, it's like, because I guess an example would be like Wraps of Clarity for Demon Hunters. It's any generator, so just use any generator, but it allows you to open okay, I use grenades, or I use hardened. No, that's the rune.
Evasive fire.
Yes, evasive rune hardened. But it works with both those in the builds. So this would be the same thing. It actually kind of goes with how the Necro is. It makes it a little bit higher skill cap because they give you the defensive free, because that's just an affix on the belt, but you have to work for the damage. So you have to pick your curse, and you have to apply it right, and you have to maximize its uptime, the mobs you hit, and everything. So that's not a bad trade-off, because you have to work for the damage, which, if anything, I would rather have to work for the damage and have the free defense than have to work for the defense and get the offense free. I would think you're the same way, especially in hardcore.
A little bit, to say the least. Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So I would love to see that come through. I'd love to see pretty much all these changes come through. I think a lot of them all make sense in terms of being fair feedback. No one's asking for the Necromancer to just be like ridiculously OP. And I actually don't think that it came in OP as a lot of us were potentially thinking it might, as a selling point, Play this class, do a greater of 120 right now. I think it came in kind of solid, and now we'll see some things being lowered, some things being upped, and kind of get everything to that nice, smooth middle ground. Are there any, based on either what you've seen, heard, or potentially experienced in your, moving, are there any things with the Necro that maybe are just pet peeves, without being skeletons, pet peeves, get it, that you would want to mess with for the Necro, or potentially see as a change?
I think it's just tightening of the ship, which is what they're doing. Just kind of tightening up the loose ends before the season comes in, as well as again, it kind of goes back to the builds aren't settled, so it's hard to complain about builds and stuff when they're not settled. And this is and this should be something that we should not be complaining about. We should be celebrating, because individuality is not trumped by efficiency yet. Give it time, it will be, but we're in that time where we're allowed to basically sandbox the class, and we're allowed to do what we really want and figure it out. And the class is built in such a way where you're like, okay, I want to do something with Grim Scythe, and then you have the one-hander put in the cube, so you get a 100% chance. And then there's the passive where and it works with Curse Scythe. Was it attack speed bonus if you have Curse Scythe, or did you just have a scythe
for your generators?
Yeah, or I think if you have a scythe, it increases your attack speed. Forgive me for botching up passives and names and effects and everything.
So there's one passive that if you have a scythe, you get returned essence and life, and then there's one there just for your Siphon Blood, Grim Scythe, and Bone Spikes. You get increased attack speed.
Yeah, that. So it's very easy in the Necro to see a gear. I have this gear. I can use this ability. and this passive works for it. So it's very easy to go through and pick your abilities, but it's very hard because all the abilities are very useful. All the passives tend to be very useful, and everything tends to pair up so easily that by the time you're like, oh, and I can use this, and you have one passive and maybe one ability left, and you're going, crap, I kind of need to pare everything down. But that's not a complaint. It's because the Necro came in good. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really there. I mean, I'm actually happy the Necro didn't come out overpowered, because then we'd be facing nerfs, and whenever you nerf something, especially something like a proc nerf, you don't know how much they're going to nerf it and how much that's kind of a detrimental effect. So, again, I mean, I feel the Necro is probably in the best shape it could have come out the bat. Hopefully the changes they deliver to us, hopefully next week, that would be the best time. Give it a good week plus of, make sure everything went in right, and catching bugs before the season.
Mm-hmm.
I feel that's probably we're probably at the best spot we could have hoped for.
Okay. I feel like that's fair feedback. For me, it's mostly speed. I love speed builds, and it's a big component of being efficient throughout a season. You'll always need more keys. You'll always need to be able to do your quick bounties. So I think speed builds are very important when you're considering sort of the longevity of playing a class for, the duration of a season. And right now, I think one of the issues that sort of ties into what you were saying is that the Necromancer has limitations in terms of what you can choose, but I think it actually kind of pigeonholes them into certain makeups, if you will. So if I want to make a build that speed farms T13, I've seen a couple of good ones, I'm not going to lie. I've seen some ones that look like they just need a little bit more, and they would actually be very quick. You're either choosing damage and killing things relatively quickly, but you don't have any real sources of increased movement speed, or you have to sacrifice using, Stewart's Greaves, or using Fueled by Death, which actually is currently bugged. And I really do hope that gets a fix in the next round of whatever updates we get, because I want to play with that passive to see just how impactful the 30% movement speed could be with those stacked up fully. There's just a few sources of those movement speed bonuses that you can't quite fit into a build without sacrificing power. So then so say you do, right? I have my Stewart's Greaves in the cube now. I have my Lost Time that I'm using as my phylactery. All of a sudden, I'm not benefiting from other sources of damage that really bring the Necromancer into this sort of killing machine mode. And so now my killing speed is lower, but my movement speed is up. And I'm relying more on something like the procs of the Mirror Knight gem with the Inarius set, or something like I better get a good conduit pylon or something. And we don't want that in regular rifts, because we get enough fishing in greater rifts. And so I just really hope that, I don't know exactly what the fix is, but I hope that speed builds in general, and maybe that's what the Pestilence thing will become, get some support wherein you can clear the screen relatively efficiently and not be sacrificing fast movement. Be able to fit an Ingeon, be able to fit more of those movement speed increases, and still be able to do good damage output, because that's one of the things where I think it needs to get pared down. You want good Greater Rift builds, those will come up, no doubt. People will find them. But the speed builds just seem to be a little bit harder to come by currently. Yeah.
And also you and me are used to impale builds, so it's like move for days, vault for days. So it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard coming from that type of build set, and then go, I just want to blood rush everywhere. Like, why can't I do that?
Yeah. And that actually is a consideration, though, because you might say, well, look at the Necromancer in its own microcosm. Like, is it fast among itself? And to some degree, yes. Like, you can get builds that let you blood rush a decent amount, and then you have like something like Stewart's Greaves that gives you the movement speed after the blood rush. But then you're going to be playing this class not in a shell, right? You're going to solo Greater Rifts or solo Greater Rifts, but eventually you're going to be playing with other classes. And if you see that Demon Hunter vaulting circles around you, if you see that Wizard just TPing straight to the end and you're still stuck at the portal to get into the Rift, that does not feel good. It almost reminds me of, do you remember when barbs were good, first of all? Sorry. Oh, it's so fun to take shots. But also when they had the Raycore set where they would just pull the entire rift with them. Just like, I'm taking these mobs and these mobs and these mobs. You guys having fun back there yet?
It's like you get like a Festering Woods or a Fields of Misery map or something, and they'd have half the map wrangled up by the time you got to the middle. And if they were good, like incoming angle, like what? And you just see like 1,000 mobs pop up, and then like the area effect calculations get going in. It's like 3 frames a second, like stutter, like 1,000 rounds of calculations go through. 3 seconds later, another 1,000 rounds of calculations goes through, and eventually kill everything. And then the bard's like, okay, do it again, and they're like, no, my computer's gonna die. Stop, don't. So yeah, definitely, there can be too much of a good thing.
Yes, definitely agree. So yeah, I mean, I guess the takeaway is that I hope there'll just be a little bit more refinement. Like we want to see those niches develop, right? Like the people that love the blood stuff, I want to see them have like the craziest, like just primo blood setups. I want to see anyone who really wants to speed farm just be able to go balls to the wall speed. And obviously the greater risks will take care of themselves, because that's how you get your rankings, and everyone wants rank 1, right? That's what we're all here for.
Yeah.
So that'll get figured. And like you said, it's in a very strong spot in terms of just coming out, and now we'll need more. Oh, while we're on the topic, because we actually haven't touched on it, and it's my goal to talk about this in every podcast. Have you done any challenge rifts?
I did the first one.
What'd you think? That was the Shadows Impale.
Was it Shadows?
with the Fan of Knives.
With the Fan of Knives, the Vengeance without the Dawn, and the Impale without the belt. So, again, I say, was it Shadows? No, it was interesting. I did it because I remembered, like, oh, I could use some cubing mats. I know exactly where I can go get them. 3.5 minutes later, boom. I was able to cube 8 more necro items. So let me, yeah, definitely like the challenge rifts. Even if it's like a weird means to an end as far as crafting mats are concerned, it's something that gets you out of monotony of doing GRs till your eyes bleed, or I have to farm another 50 keys tonight. It's like, I would just do something a little bit different. Because
just to mix it up. I think what saves it for me when those really bad builds come up is that I know everyone else is suffering under the exact same stuff, right? Like, I can't be the only one who just hit the vault button and has no discipline, and now I'm stuck on this wall, and fuck, I just ruined this challenge rift run. Reset. You know? So I think
misery loves company type.
Yes.
Poetic promise. And I hate that too. It's like, Vault, you don't have enough discipline. It's like, what? I impaled. You do not have enough.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, really?
You just came off 3 months of impaling with Chain of Shadows, and you're like, wait, it's not here. Why? Oh man, it's great. It's great. I think that I would like to see more of the community, especially sort of gathering around it. There was a couple of good ideas I saw floating around, like maybe people challenging each other to do challenge rifts. So like, you know, call each other out on like forums or streams or something and say who can get the better time, or I don't know, just engender more of the competition so that maybe people can galvanize behind it, and even if they're not challenge rift runners themselves, cheer for their favorite challenge rift runner. Or maybe, you know, it's only the second one, so we haven't started to see trends of who's really good at them, but you might get to this point where like someone is streaking #1s for the last 6 weeks, and you're like, holy crap, are they gonna be able to get it again? And like, oh, like this guy's challenging them, he was #3 last week. Like, you know, you could get these storylines, but if no one's really digging into them, if they're not being kind of highlighted or celebrated, it might just get swept under the rug, and I don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, I mean, all I gotta say is I made a video, I spent like 75 hours on it, and like 50 hours just implementing my idea, which is essentially just taking GRs as the whole GRs. Wow, that's too habit for me. Take the CRs as they are now, open up to the 2, 3, 4 mans, let people select a class they want on the 2, the 3, and the 4 man, and then just expand it to direct competition for the solo and the 2 mans, where you have 2 people, 3 people, 4 people running that challenge rift, but they're linked together. So the first person that beats it, they win, and you know directly you whoop the ass of the other three people you challenge, or you open it up to running two-mans against each other, or hell, two three-mans against each other, or two full four-mans against each other, and you actually see who really is like the top meta group, which would be more interesting, I'd say, in some respects than the solo, because the solo, it's like perfection, where the group is working together. That's competitive. That's what it's all about as far as esports. It's the competitiveness and it's how the group works together. So just get that in there some way, somehow. I mean, the technology can get there. Don't tell me it can't. They finally implemented the fix of when you die in a GR. I know you don't know what that feels like for continuing on in a GR. But it's annoying. It was soul sucking to see 30 seconds go by before you can hit the stupid button. Now you can hit the button, at least solo, and you can just continue along your merry way. So it's like your adrenaline, like you don't work it up, you die, your adrenaline dies off, 30 seconds go by, and then you've got the adrenaline going, and then you die again, 30 seconds goes by. It's like you're still in the fight, you're still in the hunt. You just know that you have to haul ass because that time just got sucked away from you. So if they can get there with that, they can get there with CRs, and we can finally have some form of PvEVP in Diablo and finally have something on the main stage at BlizzCon. God damn it, ran over.
Mic drop. No, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I hope that it's really... The way I kind of look at 2.6 and the Necro is it's the beginning to something else. And there's a lot of new stuff in here. There's a new class, new features. And I just, want, before being incredibly critical, but also passionate, want to at least give it some time to see what develops. Like, it all depends really on how Blizzard handles it. And that goes for both how the Necromancer fares going into Season 11 and beyond, and also how Challenge Rifts fares as a mode. I think there are tons of great ideas. Like, even in chat, someone was saying it'd be cool if we could actually vote on, like, say there are 3 potential Challenge Rifts, put it to a vote to the community. That just gets the community more involved, more excited. If the one you voted for becomes the CR, now you're kind of hyped to get in there and try it out. So there are ways to further engage with everyone to kind of continue the excitement for it all. And I hope that some of it, if not all of it, gets implemented. I don't know, not every idea is a great idea, but there are a lot of good ones.
Yeah, and this is where we say, "Oh, you're Blizzard fanboys" moment. I'm so happy with what the team has done and Continue has done, and they delivered on their promise technically, because they kept on saying, no, second half of next year, and it's actually, it was basically right there. It wasn't like second half of the year and it winds up being like 2 months before BlizzCon type deal. No, they got in like proper time, and it gives us hope that if they do another class, good, and unveil it at BlizzCon, we know that they're gonna have development efficiencies in place. They're not gonna have to contend with Revive as far as a skill that sucks their soul, because that skill probably was the biggest detriment to getting the Necromancer out sooner than later, because every monster shaded 6 different ways, thousands and thousands of art assets, all the art assets. We know that they can deliver, and they can do other stuff along the way, like quality of life stuff, like the crafting mats tab and the armory were 2 big things that came in along with the Necromancer. So we know that we still have a bright, balanced future in Diablo 3 as far as things coming, and now it's just gonna be that wait. It's gonna be a long, hot summer, but at least we have the Necromancer in a new season to bring us through.
Yeah, no, Season 11 should definitely be hype, because if anything, Season 10 will continue as a conduit through Season 11, because all the stuff that happened then, besides the wizard gameplay of going and getting those stacks, didn't change. So there's pretty much anything you were doing that you felt was good in Season 10, you can continue to do in Season 11. So even if Necro were to have 0 impact, which I doubt it will, You can do the same thing. And Season 10 was loved by a lot of people. It was played pretty heavily. So I'm looking forward to it, man. I think there's a lot of fun to be had, a lot of hype to be had, and we'll just continue to keep track of what comes our way as the weeks trundle on and as Season 11 gathers closer. So we're pretty much at the end here. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, yeah, definitely. Looking forward to it.
I was going to say, we're pretty much at the end. We actually didn't get any new emails, so you guys out there, we want to hear from you. Shame. Ring the shame bell. Westmarch Workshop at blizzpro.com. That's the email in case you forgot. And also the WM Workshop. If you're a Twitter-minded person, feel free to shoot us some tweets. Tell us how you're feeling. What's your Necromancer looking like? Have you even bought it? Are there reasons why you haven't bought it? Are you enjoying any of the free stuff in patch 2.6, the new zones? How are they faring for you in Greater Rifts? We didn't even talk much about that, but Temple of the Firstborn and the Shrouded Moors are in Greater Rifts. Challenge Rifts are free. Have you tried those? Just let us know kind of where you're at and how the summer is treating you. Maybe you're just taking some time off and lazing about in the summer heat. But we definitely want to hear from you, so please feel free to write into the show. I think we had one item of the week, but we'll just leave that until we get a few more and then showcase that next time around. Other things, like I mentioned, get a hold of us. Email westmarchworkshop@blizzpro.com, Twitter, the WM Workshop, and of course, always catch the live stream. We're here Wednesdays, every other Wednesday, at 6 Pacific. I almost forgot when we go live. 6 Pacific, 9. You can tell this isn't my part. I don't do this. 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern. That's at twitch.tv/BlizzPro. That's when the live show goes down. Come in a little early for the pre-show. Stay a little after for the after show. It gets weird. The website for all the articles and feedback and things you can find interesting content on, stuff we've discussed on the show. That's at diablo.blizzpro.com. Check that out. And of course, here on the channel, we have other shows for our other games that we cover. There's the Heroes Power Hour that goes down on Tuesdays. There's the Well Met podcast, which I believe moved to Mondays instead of Sundays, or it might be on Sundays. Not entirely sure. The Overwatch podcast that we have, the Payload, that's on Thursdays. And we have a Warcraft podcast as well, but that one actually doesn't record live, so you can feel free to look for that on the Warcraft BlizzPro website. And that is all good stuff. Feel free to support it. Feel free to follow the channel, sub to the channel, all that good stuff. Lots of good things to look forward to. In-game, in case you're looking to hang out, we have a clan. It's the BlizzPro clan. It's, again, full. Believe it or not, I guess enough people came back for Necro and wanted some spots, so it's full up again. It looks like maybe before the season starts, we'll have a few more slots. So hopefully if you want to get in, you can get in. But we'll continue to roll through. Whoever is inactive, we'll drop them out and pick up new people. But right now, a little tight, unfortunately. And then, of course, if you don't want to leave your clan, but you still want to hang out, we have the in-game community. And that's Westmarch Workshop. You can search for that in-game. Just do find communities, Westmarch Workshop. People in there chatting with each other, sharing bounties, sharing the love, sharing Greater Rifts. Make some groups, play together, have fun. Last but not least, the Discord. I've been in the Discord quite a bit over the course of the last season, even in the off season. When I'm on stream, things like that, I'll pop in there. So feel free to hang out as well. It's discord.gg/BlizzPro. Little special unique URL there, and it's just as easy as typing that in and then joining. Recommend using the standalone software for Discord. It's very good. Lovely program. Keep in touch with everybody who listens to the podcast and who just loves to talk about Blizzard games. And last but not least, Dread, where can they find you if they're looking to hang out and chat?
If you want to find me on the internet, you can find me on Twitter at Dredscythe. I tend to make things easy.
I like it. One name, one man. And if you're looking for Neinball, who again is moving to outer space, he's taking his boxes up there one by one. A lot of rocket fuel. Very costly. You can find him. Joke fail. You can find him at Neinball Gamer on Twitter. And he's actually been streaming a decent amount too. If you're looking forward to seeing what he does with his Necromancer, feel free to check out twitch.tv/Neinball. And then for myself, you can see on stream there, Leviathan D3. That's my Twitter name. And then for Twitch, it's twitch.tv/Leviathan111. Recently became a partner. Pretty cool news. So feel free to come and hang out, check it out. sub, follow, whatever you want to do. It's good times. We have a lot of fun over there. Listen to some chill music, play some games. But I guess that's it, man. Do you have any last words for the people before we go?
No, I'm not sleeping halfway through this. In fact, I'm way too excited because, as I told Neinball, I found Full Throttle at our new house location. I couldn't be happier. So I'm good. But that's about it. Have a good night, folks.
We didn't say dick.
Well, that's Neinball.
Oh, yeah. What a dick for not being here.
He's the dick in the middle. Some could say he's our resident boner.
And we're done. I was going to